The hotel manager believed she was turning away an ordinary guest, but before the sun set that evening, she would discover that the quiet woman standing in her lobby held more influence over the future of the hotel than she could possibly imagine. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The Grand Crest Hotel stood at the center of downtown Chicago, its glass exterior reflecting the late afternoon sunlight across several city blocks. Known as one of the most luxurious hotels in the region, it welcomed celebrities, executives, investors, and international guests throughout the year. The lobby looked more like a private gallery than a hotel entrance. Marble floors stretched beneath crystal chandeliers. Fresh flowers decorated every corner. Guests in tailored suits moved between the reception area and the elevators, while soft piano music drifted through the air. Into this elegant setting walked Abigail Monroe. At 37 years old, she carried herself with quiet confidence, but there was nothing flashy about her appearance. She wore a simple cream cardigan over a navy shirt, comfortable slacks, and practical shoes suitable for travel. Her blonde hair was neatly arranged, and she carried a modest leather tote bag over one shoulder. To most people passing through the lobby, she looked like an ordinary traveler. No expensive jewelry, no designer luggage, no visible signs of wealth. Abigail approached the front desk with a warm smile and waited patiently behind several guests. Nearby, employees moved efficiently through the busy afternoon check-in period. Among them was Lauren Whitmore, the hotel operations manager. Lauren took great pride in maintaining what she considered the exclusive reputation of the Grand Crest Hotel. She knew many of the hotel's regular high-profile guests by name and often believed she could identify someone's importance within seconds of seeing them. When her eyes landed on Abigail, she immediately formed an opinion. A simple traveler, nothing more. After several minutes, Abigail reached the front desk. A young associate named Noah Parker greeted her politely. "Welcome to the Grand Crest Hotel. How may I assist you today?" Abigail handed over her identification and reservation information. "I am checking in. I believe my suite is ready." Noah began typing into the system. Before he could finish, his eyebrows lifted slightly. He glanced at the screen once more as if verifying what he had read. At that moment, Lauren noticed his reaction and walked toward the desk. "Is there a problem?" she asked. Noah hesitated. "No, I was just confirming a reservation." Lauren looked at the monitor. Her expression changed almost immediately. Then she looked at Abigail, then back at the screen. The reservation listed one of the most expensive accommodations in the entire hotel, the presidential suite. Lauren's eyes narrowed slightly. Around them, several guests waited nearby. A businessman checking messages looked up briefly. A couple standing near the concierge desk glanced toward the reception area. Lauren offered a professional smile that felt noticeably forced. "There may be an issue with your reservation," she said. Abigail remained calm. "An issue?" Lauren nodded. "Yes. I would like to verify a few details first." Abigail's expression did not change. Of course. Lauren studied her carefully, as though searching for evidence that the reservation could not possibly belong to the woman standing before her. Then she folded her arms and asked a question loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Are you certain you reserved the presidential suite yourself?" For a brief moment, the lobby seemed to pause around Lauren Whitmore's question. The soft piano music continued drifting through the air, but several nearby guests had already turned their attention toward the front desk. Abigail Monroe remained calm. She looked at Lauren with steady eyes and answered without hesitation. "Yes, I am certain." Lauren's smile remained fixed, though it carried a growing edge of skepticism. "The presidential suite is our most exclusive accommodation." Abigail nodded politely. "I am aware of that." Lauren glanced once more at the reservation details on Noah Parker's screen. Everything appeared valid. The reservation existed. The payment authorization was complete. Yet Lauren could not reconcile the information on the monitor with the woman standing before her. In Lauren's mind, someone who reserved a suite costing several $1,000s per night should arrive with luxury luggage, designer clothing, or at least some visible sign of wealth. Abigail displayed none of those things. Nearby guests began exchanging curious looks. A businessman waiting in line lowered his phone slightly to listen. A woman standing beside the concierge desk whispered something to her companion. The atmosphere was becoming increasingly uncomfortable. No one noticed it immediately. He also noticed something else. Every detail in the reservation system appeared legitimate. There was no indication of fraud or error. Still, Lauren continued questioning Abigail. "May I ask what brings you to the Grand Crest?" Lauren said. Abigail answered simply, "I am staying for a few days." A few guests smiled quietly at the response. Lauren seemed annoyed by its simplicity. Business or leisure? A little of both. The answer only deepened Lauren's frustration. She wanted specifics. She wanted evidence. Most of all, she wanted confirmation that her instincts were correct. "And you personally made this reservation?" she asked again. "Yes." Lauren folded her arms. Interesting. The word hung in the air. Abigail remained patient. She had encountered situations like this before. People often confused simplicity with insignificance. What disappointed her was how quickly assumptions formed. Noah shifted uncomfortably behind the desk. Every passing minute made the situation feel less professional. He considered quietly handing Abigail her room key and ending the matter. But Lauren outranked him. Challenging her decision publicly could create problems for his job. Around them, the audience continued growing. Guests arriving through the front doors slowed their pace. Bell staff exchanged glances. The front desk had become the center of attention. Lauren leaned slightly forward. "You understand that we occasionally encounter reservation discrepancies." Abigail nodded. "Of course. And sometimes individuals attempt to access accommodations that were not intended for them." The implication was obvious. Several people nearby heard it. A low murmur spread through the lobby. Abigail's expression never changed. "Are you suggesting that this reservation is not mine?" Lauren paused briefly. "I am saying I would like additional verification." Noah glanced at the screen again. Additional verification was not required under hotel policy. He knew it. Lauren knew it. Yet nobody said so. Abigail reached into her tote bag and removed a small leather card holder. As she opened it, a silver membership card briefly became visible before she slid it back inside. Noah noticed the distinctive logo engraved into the metal surface. Something about it seemed familiar, though he could not immediately place it. Before he could think further, Lauren spoke again. "Actually, I think it would be best if we resolved this completely." She stepped from behind the desk and turned toward the center of the lobby where more guests could hear her. Then she looked directly at Abigail. "I would like you to provide proof, right here, that you are entitled to occupy the presidential suite." The lobby fell quiet after Lauren Whitmore's public demand. Guests who had been checking in, waiting for transportation, or speaking with the concierge now watched openly. The marble floors reflected the chandelier light above, and for a moment it felt as though the entire hotel had become an audience. Abigail Monroe stood calmly beside the reception desk, her leather tote resting against her side. She had been questioned, doubted, and quietly judged by people who knew nothing about her. Yet there was no anger in her expression. Lauren waited with folded arms, convinced she was protecting the standards of the Grand Crest Hotel. Noah Parker stood behind the desk, increasingly uncomfortable. He had already reviewed the reservation multiple times. Every detail was valid. Every authorization had been approved. Yet the situation had moved beyond policy and into something far more personal. Abigail looked around the lobby. Dozens of eyes met hers. Some were curious. Some were skeptical. A few seemed almost eager to see how the situation would end. Lauren took a step forward. "If you cannot provide the proof I requested, then I am afraid I cannot release the presidential suite." The statement echoed through the reception area. Abigail nodded slowly. "I understand your position." Lauren seemed surprised by the response. She had expected resistance. Instead, she found composure. "Then perhaps we can find a more suitable room for you," Lauren continued. "Or if you prefer, we can assist you in locating accommodations elsewhere." A few nearby guests exchanged glances. The meaning was clear. The woman standing before them was being told she did not belong in the most prestigious space the hotel had to offer. Noah felt his stomach tighten. He wanted to speak. He wanted to remind Lauren that the reservation was legitimate. Yet the pressure of the moment kept him silent. Abigail remained still for several seconds. Then she spoke softly. "You know, the interesting thing about respect is that it costs nothing to give." The lobby grew quieter. Even the conversations near the elevators faded away. Abigail continued. People often believe dignity should be earned through status, titles, or appearances. But true dignity belongs to everyone before any of those things are known. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. There was no accusation in it, no attempt to embarrass anyone. Yet her words seemed heavier than any argument could have been. A hush fell across the lobby. Several guests lowered their eyes. Others shifted uncomfortably. Lauren maintained her professional posture, but uncertainty flickered across her face for the first time. Abigail offered a small smile. I hope the hotel continues to succeed. It is a beautiful place. Then she reached for her tote bag. The movement felt strangely emotional. A woman who had every reason to argue was choosing grace instead. Noah watched as Abigail carefully gathered her belongings. He noticed again the silver card holder, partially visible inside her bag. Something about it continued to trouble him, though he could not yet explain why. Abigail thanked him quietly for his help. The simple kindness made him feel even worse. Without another word, she turned away from the reception desk and began walking toward the seating area near the grand lobby windows. Her footsteps echoed softly across the polished marble floor. Nobody stopped her. Nobody spoke. The entire lobby seemed suspended in silence as she moved through the crowd. Outside, the afternoon sunlight was beginning to fade beyond the city skyline. Abigail sat alone near the windows, looking out across Chicago with a thoughtful expression. The image lingered in the minds of everyone watching. And somewhere beyond the hotel's revolving entrance doors, the sound of an arriving luxury vehicle suddenly rolled into the driveway, causing heads throughout the lobby to turn at once. Abigail Monroe remained seated near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Chicago while the lobby slowly returned to its routine. Guests resumed checking in. Bell staff moved luggage carts across the polished marble floor. The soft piano music continued floating through the air. Yet beneath the appearance of normalcy, an uncomfortable tension lingered. Many people who had witnessed the exchange at the front desk could not stop thinking about it. Abigail sat quietly with her hands folded over her tote bag. The fading afternoon sunlight painted golden reflections across the glass beside her. She seemed peaceful, but her thoughts had traveled far beyond the hotel lobby. This visit was never meant to be about luxury. The presidential suite itself held little importance to her. The reason she had come carried far deeper meaning. 20 years earlier, before the Grand Crest became one of the city's most prestigious hotels, Abigail's father had worked there during a difficult period in his life. He was not an executive. He was not wealthy. He had worked long hours helping maintain the property while supporting his family. Yet he loved the building. He often told Abigail that true hospitality was not measured by chandeliers or marble floors. It was measured by how people were treated when nobody knew their name. Years later, after his passing, Abigail had quietly continued visiting the hotel every year on the anniversary of his favorite day working there. It had become a personal tradition, a way of honoring the values he taught her: kindness, humility, respect. She glanced toward the lobby and smiled faintly. Her father would have found the day's events unfortunate, but he also would have reminded her not to let disappointment change her character. A familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. "May I sit here?" It was Noah Parker. Abigail nodded. Noah took a seat across from her. For a few moments, neither spoke. Finally, Noah looked down. "I am sorry about what happened." Abigail's expression softened. "You do not need to apologize." Noah shook his head. "Maybe not, but I knew something felt wrong." He looked back toward the reception desk where Lauren Whitmore continued managing operations. "I should have said something sooner." Abigail smiled gently. Doing the right thing is often easier to recognize than it is to do. Noah laughed quietly. "That is true." For the first time all afternoon, some of the tension left his face. Abigail reached into her tote bag and carefully placed the silver card holder on the small table beside her. Noah noticed the engraved emblem again. This time he recognized it. His eyes widened slightly. Before he could ask about it, Abigail calmly changed the subject. She seemed more interested in encouraging him than discussing herself. "The fact that you cared enough to question what happened says a lot about your character," she told him. Noah sat quietly, absorbing the words. Few people had ever spoken to him with such genuine respect. Nearby, several guests continued glancing toward Abigail. Their curiosity had not disappeared. If anything, it had grown stronger. Then suddenly the atmosphere shifted. Outside the front entrance, a sleek black vehicle rolled beneath the hotel's covered driveway. The engine noise was subtle but unmistakable. Almost immediately, security personnel straightened. Senior staff members exchanged looks. Even Lauren glanced toward the entrance. Something important was happening. The revolving doors slowly turned. A hush spread through the lobby. Conversations faded. Heads turned toward the entrance as the sound of measured footsteps echoed across the marble floor. Whatever was about to happen, it carried enough significance to change the energy of the entire hotel in an instant. The measured footsteps continued across the marble floor, and within seconds the atmosphere inside the Grand Crest Hotel transformed completely. Employees who had been moving casually through the lobby suddenly became more attentive. Conversations faded. Guests turned toward the entrance. Even the concierge staff straightened their posture. Abigail Monroe remained seated near the window beside Noah Parker, watching quietly. Unlike everyone else, she did not appear surprised. Through the revolving doors stepped Samuel Kensington, chairman of the Kensington Hospitality Group and one of the most respected figures in the luxury hotel industry. His company oversaw properties across the country, including the Grand Crest Hotel itself. His visits were rare, and they never happened without notice. A ripple of excitement moved through the lobby. Several executives immediately approached him. Lauren Whitmore quickly adjusted her jacket and moved forward with a confident smile. The difficult encounter at the front desk seemed forgotten. This was the type of guest she understood. Powerful, recognizable, important. Mr. Kensington, Lauren said warmly. Welcome to the Grand Crest. We are honored to have you here. Samuel offered a polite nod. Thank you. Yet his attention seemed elsewhere. As staff members greeted him, his eyes moved slowly across the lobby. He appeared to be searching for someone. Lauren noticed immediately. Is there anything we can assist you with? She asked. Samuel continued scanning the room. I am looking for a guest. The statement surprised her. Of course. May I ask who? Before she could receive an answer, Samuel's gaze stopped. His expression changed instantly. The professional courtesy on his face became genuine warmth. Without another word, he stepped away from the welcoming group and began walking across the lobby. Not toward the executive lounge. Not toward the elevators. Toward the seating area near the windows. Lauren turned to follow his line of sight. Her confidence wavered. Noah felt his pulse quicken. Abigail calmly stood as Samuel approached. The entire lobby seemed to hold its breath. Samuel smiled. Abigail. His voice carried easily through the quiet room. I was wondering when you would arrive. Several nearby guests exchanged confused glances. Lauren froze. Samuel extended his hand, but Abigail greeted him like an old friend. The familiarity was unmistakable. This was not a routine guest relationship. This was mutual respect built over many years. It is good to see you, Samuel, Abigail said. And you? Samuel glanced briefly around the lobby before returning his attention to her. I hope your stay has been comfortable. A subtle silence followed the question. Noah looked toward Lauren. Lauren looked toward the floor. Abigail answered carefully. There have been a few unexpected complications. Samuel's smile disappeared. Not dramatically. Simply gone. For the first time, he seemed fully aware that something was wrong. He looked around the room again, noticing the curious faces, the unusual tension, and the uncomfortable expressions among several staff members. Then his eyes settled on Lauren. The realization spread slowly through the lobby. People were beginning to understand that Abigail Monroe was not an ordinary guest. Lauren felt it too. Every assumption she had made earlier suddenly seemed far less certain. Samuel noticed the silver card holder resting on the table beside Abigail. His expression softened briefly. I see you still carry it. Abigail smiled. Every year. The exchange only deepened the mystery for everyone listening. Then Samuel turned toward the reception area and spoke in a calm voice that somehow carried more authority than a shout ever could. The lobby went silent. Even the piano music seemed distant. Samuel looked directly at Lauren Whitmore and asked a single question that made the entire room stop breathing. Why was the woman who helped save this hotel denied access to her suite? The question hung over the lobby like a sudden change in weather. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Guests who had been casually observing the situation only moments earlier now stared openly at Abigail Monroe. The woman they had assumed was an ordinary traveler was suddenly being addressed by Samuel Kensington as someone deeply connected to the very future of the hotel. Lauren Whitmore felt her confidence disappear. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. Samuel's expression remained calm, yet there was unmistakable authority behind it. "I asked a question," he said gently. The silence deepened. Finally, Lauren managed to speak. "There appeared to be concerns regarding the reservation." Samuel looked toward the front desk. "Concerns?" Noah Parker swallowed hard. For several seconds he hesitated. Then he did something he wished he had done much earlier. He stepped forward. "The reservation was valid," he said honestly. Several heads turned toward him. Noah continued. "Everything matched our records. The payment authorization was approved. There was no system error." Lauren closed her eyes briefly. The truth, once spoken aloud, felt impossible to hide. Samuel nodded slowly. Then he turned back toward Abigail. "I am sorry you experienced this." Abigail offered a small smile. "Thank you, Samuel." There was no anger in her voice. No desire to embarrass anyone. Her calmness only made the contrast more striking. Guests throughout the lobby exchanged looks as pieces of the puzzle began falling into place. One executive standing near the elevators suddenly recognized the silver emblem he had seen earlier. Another guest whispered Abigail's name after finally connecting it to articles she had once read. The realization spread gradually from person to person. Samuel glanced around the room. "Many of you may not know this," he said. "But 15 years ago, during one of the most difficult periods in our company's history, we were facing the possibility of losing several flagship properties." The lobby grew silent again. Samuel continued. Financing had collapsed. Investors were leaving. Many people believed recovery was impossible. He looked toward Abigail. One person disagreed. Several guests listened intently. Abigail Monroe provided the investment partnership that allowed this company to survive. A hush fell across the lobby. Samuel was not exaggerating. His tone carried the certainty of fact. Without her support, this hotel likely would not be standing here today. The words landed heavily. Lauren felt the color drain from her face. Yet Samuel was not finished. What makes her contribution remarkable is that she never sought recognition for it. He gestured toward Abigail. "Many people know the success stories. Few know the person responsible for creating the opportunities behind them." The atmosphere had completely transformed. Earlier that afternoon, people had looked at Abigail with doubt. Now they looked at her with admiration. Some with disbelief. Others with gratitude. Samuel smiled slightly. "She has helped preserve thousands of jobs, support local communities, and keep hotels like this operating during difficult times." Several employees exchanged emotional glances. Many had unknowingly benefited from decisions Abigail made years earlier. Noah looked at her differently now, not because of her influence, but because of how little she seemed interested in using it. Samuel turned toward Lauren. The tension returned instantly. Yet before he could speak further, Abigail gently stepped forward. "Please," she said. The room quieted once more. "Let us not turn this into something it does not need to become." Samuel nodded respectfully and allowed her to continue. Abigail looked at Lauren without resentment. "Mistakes happen. What matters is whether we learn from them." The kindness of the statement surprised everyone. No public humiliation. No demand for punishment. Only grace. The room seemed to breathe again. And as admiration replaced judgment throughout the lobby, the woman who had been viewed as someone who did not belong was now being seen for who she truly was. The atmosphere inside the Grand Crest Hotel remained quiet long after Abigail Monroe spoke. Her refusal to seek revenge had changed the tone of the entire situation. What could have become a public humiliation for Lauren Whitmore instead became a moment of reflection for everyone present. Guests, who had watched the confrontation, now viewed Abigail with genuine respect. Employees who had remained silent earlier found themselves reconsidering the meaning of hospitality. Samuel Kensington stood beside Abigail near the seating area while senior staff gathered nearby. The chairman's expression was calm, but it was clear that important conversations would follow. After reviewing the events with several managers, Samuel made a decision that surprised many people. There would be no dramatic punishment, no public dismissal, no spectacle. Instead, Lauren would undergo a formal review process and additional leadership training focused on guest relations, professional judgment, and service standards. The goal was not to shame her. The goal was to ensure the mistake never happened again. Abigail openly supported the decision. If an organization only punishes mistakes, she said, people learn fear. If it teaches from mistakes, people learn wisdom. Several employees nodded. The statement carried the same quiet authority that had guided her throughout the day. Samuel agreed. The discussion quickly expanded beyond one manager's actions. New procedures would be introduced throughout the hotel group. Staff would receive additional training on respectful guest interactions. Reservation disputes would be handled privately rather than publicly. Employees would be encouraged to verify facts before making assumptions. What began as an uncomfortable encounter was becoming an opportunity to improve the entire system. Noah Parker listened carefully from nearby. Throughout the afternoon, he had wrestled with the fact that he had not spoken sooner. Yet Abigail had never judged him for that hesitation. Later, Samuel approached him directly. "I heard you eventually chose honesty," he said. Noah looked surprised. "I only told the truth." Samuel smiled. "That is often more difficult than people realize." After a brief conversation, Samuel informed Noah that he would be invited to participate in a management development program within the hotel group. The opportunity represented a major step forward in his career. Noah was speechless. He glanced toward Abigail, who simply smiled and nodded. Across the lobby, guests continued approaching Abigail. Some thanked her for her contributions to local businesses. Others expressed admiration for the grace she had shown under pressure. Yet she accepted every compliment with humility. She redirected attention toward the employees, the hotel, and the importance of treating people with dignity. As evening approached, the presidential suite was finally prepared for her arrival. This time there were no questions, no doubts, no skepticism, only respect. Before heading upstairs, Abigail paused near the reception desk. Lauren stood there waiting. The manager looked very different from the confident woman who had challenged her earlier. There was no arrogance left, only honesty. "I spent years believing I could identify important people the moment they walked through those doors," Lauren admitted quietly. "Today showed me how wrong I was." Abigail listened without interrupting. Lauren glanced around the lobby. Employees, guests, and executives moved through the space that had become the center of a powerful lesson. Then she looked back at Abigail. For the first time, she understood something that had been invisible to her all along. The most valuable person in the building had not been recognized because of appearance, wealth, or status. She had been revealed by character. And standing beneath the warm lobby lights, Lauren finally realized that true hospitality begins the moment respect is offered before judgment ever has a chance to speak. Later that evening, the Grand Crest Hotel glowed against the Chicago skyline, its windows reflecting thousands of city lights across the river below. The events of the afternoon had already begun spreading quietly through the building. Employees spoke about them in break rooms. Guests discussed them over dinner. Yet the story was no longer about a reservation dispute. It had become a lesson about character. Abigail Monroe finally stepped into the presidential suite that had been waiting for her all along. The room was elegant, with sweeping views of the city and carefully prepared details that reflected the hotel's reputation. Yet her attention was drawn not to the luxury around her, but to a small framed photograph she carried in her tote bag. She placed it gently near the window. It was a picture of her father during his years working at the hotel. For several moments, she stood silently beside it. The city lights shimmered beyond the glass while memories filled the room. This annual visit had never been about wealth, status, or accommodations. It had always been about gratitude. She smiled softly. Despite the difficult start, she had fulfilled the promise she made years ago. Earlier that evening, Noah Parker received official confirmation of his acceptance into the management development program. He sat alone in a staff office reading the message several times to make sure it was real. The opportunity represented everything he had worked toward. More importantly, it reminded him that integrity mattered even when it felt uncomfortable. He quietly thanked Abigail in his thoughts before returning to work with renewed confidence. Downstairs, Lauren Whitmore requested a private meeting before the night ended. When Abigail agreed, the two women met in a quiet lounge overlooking the lobby. The atmosphere was completely different from their first encounter. There were no spectators, no pressure, no audience, just honesty. Lauren looked at Abigail for a long moment before speaking. "I owe you an apology that should have come much sooner." Abigail listened calmly. Lauren took a slow breath. I judged you based on what I thought I saw. I ignored facts that were right in front of me. And I treated you in a way no guest should ever be treated. Her voice carried genuine regret. The review process and additional training are consequences I accept completely. I am not here to argue against them. Abigail nodded. Lauren continued. I spent years believing experience gave me the ability to recognize who mattered. Today showed me how wrong that belief was. For the first time all day, emotion appeared in her eyes. I am truly sorry. Abigail smiled gently. Thank you for saying that. There was no bitterness between them, only understanding. What matters now is what you do with the lesson, Abigail said. Lauren nodded. I will not forget it. As the evening came to a close, Samuel Kensington joined Abigail briefly in the lounge. Together they looked down at the hotel lobby where guests continued arriving and departing beneath the warm lights. The building felt different now, not because ownership had changed, not because policies had changed, but because perspectives had changed. People who worked there would remember this day for years. Eventually, Abigail returned to her suite. She stood once more beside the window overlooking the city. Somewhere below, guests entered the hotel carrying stories nobody else knew. Dreams, struggles, successes, and disappointments hidden behind ordinary appearances. Her father had been right all along. The true measure of hospitality was not how people treated the famous. It was how they treated the unknown. And that night, everyone remembered that respect should never wait for a title before it is given.